the Lashes and Sashes podcast. I'm Elizabeth Tran, and I am so excited to be here today with Deshauna Barber, former Miss USA. Honestly, she is like my dream guest because she has not only been a mentor to me, but an inspiration ever since I followed her journey winning the Miss USA crown. So Deshauna, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Yes. So I mean, again, for me, I've followed your journey through Sour Lost Sweet Lessons, through the Thrive Mentorship Program. So I want to, I guess, give a little bit more context in the backstory of how you got started in pageants. I know that's part of your famous speech, but if you can kind of give a truncated version for the audience.
Sure. So I was born and raised in, well, I can't even say I'm born and raised anywhere. I was born in Georgia. I moved around a lot because both my parents were military. So I did not have any exposure to pageantry. I didn't have any exposure to this like prim and proper space. So I always knew that I was going to join the military, go active duty, and that was going to be my focus, to follow in the footsteps of my parents and of both my siblings that are service members. And I decided to go the officer route. So I went to Virginia State University. I joined their ROTC program, and I was put on a 4-year military scholarship. And during the summer between my freshman and sophomore year, I was approached by a pageant recruiter about competing in a pageant. And I laughed at her hysterically. I was not interested in the idea, but something in my brain clicked that, you know what, this sounds a little bit fascinating. So let's just see if this is something I could possibly get into. So a few months after my conversation with her as a pageant recruiter, I entered into my very first pageant, which was Miss Virginia USA. And it was in 2009. And I competed against the great and mighty Samantha Casey, who ended up winning Miss Virginia USA. And I believe she was second runner-up against Rima Fakih. So it was a blast of an experience. I definitely was in over my head. I walked in with a very cheap gown, terrible makeup, terrible hair, terrible everything. But I loved being able to get in touch with my feminine side. It was a side I had never truly had a chance to investigate or experience. So I loved putting the heels on, the makeup. I just was able to connect with a different part of Deshauna that I didn't know existed. And that's kind of what became a fascination to me. And every year after that, I competed. I eventually transitioned over to competing in DC instead of in Virginia. And on my second try at DC, but my 7th try total at a state competition, I ended up winning, and then went on to win Miss USA in June of 2016.
That's incredible. And I mean, did you even watch pageants before the pageant recruiter approaced you?
Never. The only thing that I had watched was Miss Congeniality with Sandra Bullock.
Well, I guess that's like a good transition. It does show pageants in a positive light. So I'm glad that that was your first impression of pageantry as a whole. But yeah, that is so interesting that you grew up in military, and I believe you must have been, 18, 19 years old?
Yeah, so I was 19 when I competed for my first pageant.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, and then I was going to say too, because I saw you did the Miss International pageant the year before I competed in Miss Teen International, because I think maybe the year afterwards or something, the former teen queen showed a picture of you, and I was like, oh my gosh, she was in the same system I did. So was there other systems besides that one and Miss USA that you were involved in?
Yes. So I did do Miss Virginia International, and I competed against, I think, 3 girls. It might have been 3 girls. And I won on the second try. Was it the second try? Yes, I think I won on the second try. And I ended up competing for Miss International. And That was in Chicago, Illinois in 2010 or 2011. I forgot when. And my roommate, who was Miss Maryland, actually ended up winning Miss International. So I did do international. It was a smaller production and smaller experience. I think it was a good like prerequisite to kind of like exposing me more to what it feels like to be a title holder. So I did do that. And I actually, fun fact that probably nobody knows because I have no evidence of it and I don't post it, but I did compete for Miss DC United States in 2015, this summer, I think, of 2015. And I mean, I got second runner up. I completely bombed on stage question. I bombed. It's so bad. It was so bad. And I believe Shannon Lynch won that year, if I'm not mistaken. I feel like that was, and this is how I know I'm getting old because it was 10 years ago and I'm like trying to recollect. But I'm almost positive Shannon Lynch was the one that won that year. But I was happy that I didn't end up winning because I went on to compete for DC USA and won DC USA.
Amazing.
Yeah, so it all
Amazing.
worked out in the end.
Absolutely. And I remember you mentioned this too, that thank goodness you won the year that you did for Miss USA, when it was like WME IMG, and then you became a public speaker and you signed with them. Like, it all just worked out so much better for you in the end. But when you're in that moment of either losing or competing in these other pageants, you didn't see it then, what you see now.
Absolutely. It's one of those things where timing is such a beautiful thing, and the moments in which we want a door to open but it's not meant to open, but the disappointment that we feel in seeing an opportunity slip out of our hands. But I always tell myself, when things don't work out, I always have to reassure myself that this wasn't my door, this wasn't my opportunity, this is a redirection, and what's meant for me will never pass me by. And to me, I feel like the Miss USA story and experience has made it so much easier for me to fail gracefully, because I just don't think that I would have won Miss USA under previous leadership. I think that I won Miss USA at a time in which they were looking for a rebrand. They were looking for a different identity attached to pageantry. And me being military at the time really fit perfectly in with that rebrand and that refresh.
And there was a
And I just
story
don't think I would
behind
have
you.
won
There
prior
was,
to.
yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it's cool too, because now this year's both Miss USA and Miss America are in military. I mean, what's your thoughts on that?
I love that. And you know what's really funny is that I actually had a meeting with her this morning, Alma Cooper, who's the new Miss USA. I reached out to her because I wanted to, one, introduce myself and, be a resource to her if there's anything that she ever needs. Tell her all the things I wish I had done differently. I do that with every winner that wins Miss USA, but I try to make sure I do it with her because she is military. But I love this. There was a time in which you couldn't fathom a soldier competing for pageants, let alone winning it. So I just love seeing uniformed women, whether it's a police officer, a fighter, a firefighter, a soldier, whatever it is, taking the opportunity to chase their dreams no matter what it looks like, but especially when it's such a stark difference to what it means to be a uniformed woman and to be in such a dominated masculine space, to now being able to step over into what I would consider to be one of the most feminine spaces and industries that you can compete in, which is pageantry. So it's the opposite side of the spectrum. So to be able to see this, like, I don't know if it's a paradigm, where you're looking at a soldier, someone that's shooting a gun or flying a plane or protecting and defending, and then now you're in a dress and full makeup and big hair and high heels. It just really goes to show that as human beings, we're very multifaceted, we're fluid. There's so many different sides to us that I think it's very important for us to explore all elements that live in us as human beings. And I feel it's very important not to feel limited and to place a glass ceiling over our heads, to break through that glass ceiling, to break through those stereotypes and the opinions of other people, the naysayers that don't agree, that feels like a soldier can only be a soldier and can't do anything else. I think it's really important for us to allow ourselves to be diverse in the spaces in which we occupy. And I love being able to see this because I think that as women, we're always very much placed in a box, whether it's through motherhood, whether it's through marriage, whether it's through career fields, and we're always pushed into limiting ourselves. And I think it's really beautiful when we take our power back and we force ourselves to, no matter what other people say, I'm going to chase this dream, no matter how opposite it feels, and no matter how much against the grain it is. So the fact that Miss America and Miss USA are both service members is a experience that I never thought that I would be able to witness, but I think that it's beautiful. And I think that we all have to pave the way for these types of experiences, because in 2016, completely unheard of, for a service member to be the winner of a pageant. But I remember where there was a sergeant that competed for Miss America. She had the tattoo on her side. Yes, yes, yes. She was actually Miss Kansas. Her name is Teresa Vale. And so she was Sergeant Vale at the time. And this was in 2013. So it goes to show this like domino effect, right? Where me as a service member, I'm watching her compete with a tattoo on her side, and she's competing for Miss America. And I'm like, oh my God, it would be epic for this girl to win. And she didn't end up winning. But I think that she is kind of like the beginnings of easing service women into competing in a pageant space. I don't know if Deshauna Barber winning Miss USA would have happened without a Sergeant Vale happening. And I don't know if Alma Cooper winning Miss USA would have happened without a Deshauna Barber. And we can, keep going where we're looking at the Carol Gist and the people who were the first Black Miss USA. There are so many people, and then there wouldn't be a Carol Gist without a Vanessa Williams winning Miss America in the 80s. And I think that as women, we have that responsibility, although we're somewhat of a martyr, where it's as though Vanessa Williams took 20 bullets so that Carol Gist could take 10,
Mm-hmm.
so that I could take 2. Right?
I mean, I even feel the way it's like you may have taken 20 bullets for someone like Zosie to win Miss Universe. I still get chills because I think, oh my gosh, if I was a young girl that looked like her and saw her on TV, like it gets me kind of emotional because it brings me back to the time when I saw Rio Mori win Miss Universe. And it was the first time I was like, someone actually thinks someone that looks like me is considered beautiful.
Exactly.
Oh.
Exactly. We think of all those, that ripple effect, where I really, during my final walk as Miss USA, this fear of wearing natural hair, that afro, right? This notion that I can't be Miss USA or compete at Miss Universe, all these places with 4C natural afro kinky hair. And I told myself, I want to see afro kinky hair on the Miss USA stage. We're not going to be able to do it from the bottom up. So maybe we have to work from the top down. So as soon as I walk out on stage, I have an afro. I'm like, let's accept this as natural hair and make it more socially acceptable in pageantry. And next thing you know, the next year, Miss Jamaica, a big afro. That following year, all these women are wearing afro kinky hair and winning their state titles and going on to compete at Miss USA, all for there to be a Zosie from South Africa with afro kinky hair this long that goes on to win Miss Universe. All of these things play and affect the future. And we have to have a responsibility to be brave and to look to these spaces and want to see change. I'm excited for the days in which we can have our first plus size Miss USA. I'm waiting on the day. I'm waiting on the day. But I've been able to see women that are more full and thicker bodied that are competing at this competition. And then one day I'm going to be able to see a full size. One day I'm going to be able to see a mother. One day I'm going to be able to see a married woman. it's all these moments in which I'm ready to see the diversity really peek through, because as Miss USA, you are representing a diverse nation of women that all look different: shapes, sizes, colors, religions, sexual orientations. All of those things should be represented because you're representing a country that has all of those types of human beings. So what are we doing to make sure that we don't see the same person win every single year? Because there was a time in pageantry where I just like, this girl looked like the last girl who looked like the last girl who looked like the last girl.
I think it was pageantry, it was Hollywood, it was magazines. It didn't matter what or where you saw in the media anything that was defined as, I guess, societally pretty. But it's
Yeah.
thank goodness that slowly we are expanding that standard. We are showcasing other forms of beauty. I mean, and we still have a long ways to go, but I'm so grateful now because I can comfortably compete in pageants. And for me, it is encouraging that young Asian girl to know that she is pretty and she can represent the USA. So I guess when you were talking about, being a military woman and then going into pageantry and you saw your feminine side, was that your original goal in competing in pageants?
In truth, I don't even know if I had an original goal. I just think I was curious, and they always say curiosity kills the cat, where I just lunged at it. And I think in experiencing it, I discovered the open door in me that it opened in terms of femininity. But I don't think I really had an end goal. I don't even think when I first competed I said I'm doing this because I want to be the next Miss USA or the next Miss Universe. I think I just did it out of curiosity. The amazing pageant recruiter that found me in Target that day, her name was Leslie Morton, and she passed away only a few months before I won DC. But she just kept saying, I see something in you. And I was kind of curious, like, what do you see exactly? Maybe you see something that I don't see. So it kind of just opened the door for me to experience something different. I was craving I was craving an opportunity to just step outside of my comfort zone and to do something different, and to do something that kind of just shakes the world a little bit, at least shakes my spirit, the world of my spirit. So I don't think I had an end goal. I don't think I was looking for anything other than just to try something different and to do something that's deeply uncomfortable. I don't think people really give pageant girls enough credit for what it feels like to walk out on stage in a swimsuit, walk out on stage and have to answer a question in 30 seconds, to walk out on stage in an evening gown. For some people, it seems like a very superficial experience, but it's so much bigger than that. It's really putting yourselves out there. It's being brave, and it's allowing yourself to be in a position of judgment. And I think that takes a lot to do. So I just wanted to try something different. And I think that's exactly what I did.
Wow. I mean, even when you were your last year at DC USA, was your goal then? Did your goal change to be like, okay, I'm in it to win it, like I'm ready to compete for Miss USA? Like, when did that shift?
Yeah, I think probably like the second or third year after I competed the first time, I finally watched a Miss USA pageant, and I finally watched a Miss America pageant, and I finally watched a Miss Universe pageant. And like, I turned into a fan, and I'm the person that's judging this girl's gown and this girl's hair. And I'm saying, I think this girl's going to win. And now I just find it to be somewhat of a sport where, I'm betting on a sport, and I'm in it. So I think after probably the first or second time, I looked to it to say, you know what, I think I want to be the next Miss USA. I think I want to be the first soldier to win Miss USA. I think I want to represent uniformed women. And I also wanted to see dark skinned women win Miss USA. Black women have been winning Miss USA for 30 years, since Carol Gist won in 1990. But dark skinned women have not been represented in pageantry, at least not prior to 2016. I think Kenya Moore winning in 93 was the first and only person that I would consider to be very dark that won the pageant. So I also looked at it as a challenge to not only represent uniformed women, I wanted to represent dark skinned Black women. And I wanted to see natural hair. I wanted to see darker skin. I wanted to see myself on that stage. So it also became somewhat of a challenge to put myself in a position in which I wanted to just be a part of that representation.
And you totally were. I think you, again, paved the way, did so much for the pageant community. So I really appreciate that in terms of the representation that I saw, because that's really what I focused on. Um, and then I wrote down you had lost 6 times before winning your state Miss USA title, but how did you handle that loss each time?
I think I was okay with it. I think probably maybe my fifth or sixth year, I was kind of getting a little bit to the end of my rope, or I was getting frustrated because I was just confused. I was confused as to what am I doing wrong, and I realized I was doing a lot wrong looking back. I also realized that I needed a coach. I needed a coach to be able to really guide me and to look at me with a fine tooth comb and also reassure me that it's not you, it's more so the presentation of you. So what can we do to kind of refine that presentation? So I think leading up to it, probably the fifth or sixth time, I was a little bit frustrated. And also, I just realized that Virginia wasn't my state. I think DC was definitely my state. In truth, people are always very frustrated. There was a time in which state hopping was so frowned upon.
Yes, but everything was frowned upon back then, right? So,
Where people, the pageant community had a problem with this, had a problem with that. But I think state hopping was one of those things where it's like, if you can't win that state, you shouldn't be moving, blah, blah, blah. And I'm such against that notion. Almost every Miss USA, like in the past decade, started in one state and moved to another. Okay. You had Olivia Jordan, who had been competing in California for years and finally won when she got to Oklahoma, right? You had Nia Sanchez, who was also competing in California, that eventually made it over to Nevada. So there's a history of Miss USAs, or recently Noelia, who was competing in Alabama for years and had to transition to Utah. So unfortunately, we have to think about directorship and we have to
exactly.
think about owners.
Mm-hmm. It's true, because at the end of the day, the director versus queen, it's kind of like dating. If you're not in line, if you both don't share the same goals, the same values, the same whatever it is you want to do, then you're also not going to have, you have to think about long term. What would you do if you win? How is your year going to be?
Agreed. And it's like when you're, I like that you mentioned dating where people, even with me and my husband's totally not my type. Okay. My husband was totally not my type. And here's why. I normally date, this sounds so bad. I know this like outside of the idea of pageantry, but I have a point at the end of this. I have always dated men that I would not consider to be 9 or 10s. I've always dated probably like that 6, 7-ish area where in my mind, a man that is so freaking attractive is somebody that probably is more likely to cheat. Okay. Like the more attractive you are, the more likely you are to cheat. That was what the world has told me. And that was what was embedded in my head. So I've always avoided, the very fine guy, the pretty man, right? I've always avoided that type of guy. Or they call it the pretty boy. I've always avoided the pretty boy. The guy that's got the really nice skincare routine, the nice hair routine, the guy that's really nicely dressed, buttoned up, clean cut. He's probably going to cheat on me. I'm not going to date him. All to find out that my husband is exactly that guy. And that the person that I'm meant to be with is actually not my type. And sometimes you have on those like, you have those eyeglasses on that taints your vision and gives you assumptions. But come to find out, the person that you're meant to be with is exactly not your type. I see that the same thing when it comes to pageantry. Y'all have a type. So that's why I feel like state hopping works, is because other states are open to you winning on your own merit. Pick the best girl, period. Pick the best girl. That's all I want to win. And that girl actually has an increased chance of winning Miss USA.
Mm-hmm. And if you're going to go out of your way to get through all the requirements to stay in this state for 3 months, to literally move, do all that work. So I give all my respects to people who go out of their way and do that, because they want it bad and they will do what it takes to get there.
Oh, absolutely. And the good thing for me is that it was so easy. You know, I lived in Alexandria, Virginia at the time in which I was competing. Yeah, so it's like 10 minutes from DC. And I had been working in DC for 5 or 6 years by then. So it's nothing for me to pack up this apartment and move to Washington, DC, just so that I compete in DC because I felt like I did not fit the mold of what that state was looking for at the time. So I said, yeah, I think I have a better chance in DC. I absolutely am a state hopper. I believe in state hopping. There's no point in investing money into a state competition that you know does not fit, you don't fit their molds, and your chances of winning are in the zeros. So I was okay with packing up my stuff and leaving. And all for me to go on to win DC, to go on to win Miss USA. So it just goes to show that sometimes that state, that director, that judges panel did not see it. But other people might see it, sis. So it's okay. Pack up your stuff and go ahead and move. So I say I'll give a state 2 to 3 years of my life. That's all I got. That's all I got. And I was also competing at a time prior to the age limit being lifted. I won on my final year of eligibility at the time. Yeah, I won at 26. So it's another thing where it's like, I don't even, now you can maybe give a state 10 years of your life. Back then in the 2010s, you only got until 26. So you can't give the state too much of your time. You can't continue to waste time if you know that you're not going to win this competition or that the odds are stacked against you because they're not looking for girls that look like you or act like you or come from your background, whatever the case may be, or they just have a preference on the type of person that they want to win. So I believe, A, don't give these people all your life and don't give these people all your money. It's okay to leave and go somewhere else that you have better chances.
Yeah, but I mean, even for you, your last year competing at DC USA, I remember you telling me the year before you were in top 15 and Kara was the first runner up. So when you came in, and I know I go through my own levels of imposter syndrome of like, oh my God, the runner up is here, or oh, what do I do? How do you combat that?
I try to be friends with everybody. I know that that sounds random, but I think when you walk in there with the goal of being the best version of yourself while also making friends, it removes that competitive attachment to your mind, right? I'm not looking at her as my competition. I'm looking at her as a girl that's competing with me. We're going to have a good time. We're going to enjoy this experience. And if she walks out on top, I'm happy for her. And if I walk out on top, I'm happy for me. So I always walk in and I make friends with everybody. Like I want to get to know everyone. I had 7 bridesmaids. Half of them I met through pageants. I'm the girl's girl when it comes to pageantry. I'm the girl's girl where if you need an extra pair of earrings, extra pair of shoes, you need advice, you need help with your hair, your makeup, I'm that girl backstage. I'm not competing against none of these women. These women, we're in a competition together, but I'm competing against myself, being able to do better on this interview than I did last year, being able to walk better than I did last year, being able to wear a better gown than I did last year. So that's kind of my focus, to be able to combat that natural imposter syndrome that you feel as a contestant. And it was very difficult walking in there knowing that the first runner up, Kyra McCullough, is also here as well. Like I know that this girl came this close and now I've got to come in. I was top 15 when she was first runner up and now I'm terrified of the girl, right? But it's not a healthy thinking. So I walked in and I made friends with her, made friends with everyone. I'm still friends with her to this day. And when me and her held hands, I just said to myself, may the best person win. And it ended up being me. And little did we know that Miss USA 2016 and Miss USA 2017 are holding hands in this moment. It just goes to show how heavy the competition is in DC alone. Even if it's only 15 or 16 people competing, these are the best 15, 16 people within a 7 square mile radius. But yeah, I just focus on having a good time.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And then even also, because I went to like a PR pageant coaches seminar when you shared your experience competing at DC USA, you even had your items stolen in your car the day before the competition. And I'm like, how I can barely handle my imposter syndrome. But you have that on top of a robbery. I would have been like, I'm done. I'm out. Sign me off. Like,
Oh, I was so close. And if it weren't for Jules, Jules talked me out of like, because I was done. I was literally on my way to interviews. So, like, this was Friday morning. So, you have interviews that evening, and then the next morning, you have prelims. And then that afternoon, you have finals. So, it was the day of interview, and they took everything except for a garment bag that had my swimsuit, my evening gown, and my interview outfit in it. But makeup, hair, iPad, laptop, all of it was gone. And mind you, I was at the nail salon, broad daylight. The nail salon, broad daylight. My car is not in the back of the parking lot. It's in like the second row from the front door of the nail salon. And I'm getting my nails done, and I walk out and my window's busted out and everything is gone but a garment bag that had my winning evening gown in it. And this is, I don't want to get too deep into faith, but I really believe that there have been walls, hurdles, and mountains placed in front of me because the universe knew something great was coming. Like, I think that, the devil and evil spirits and entities work in very interesting ways where they know something good is on its way for you, and they're trying to throw everything possible to block you. There have been a massive list of things that were meant to stop me from winning DC and from winning Miss USA that felt so like extraterrestrial to me, where it's like something is trying to stop me from doing this and I don't know why. It was one of those things where literally the day before I left for Miss USA, something's trying to stop me. The day I'm on my way to interview for DC, something tries to stop me. And it's one of those reminders where we call it a breakdown before a breakthrough. Deeply believe in that. Right before something amazing is about to happen in my life, tragedy strikes every time. Every single time. I have a list of dozens of examples of this. And that's my reminder. And, to your followers and the people that are watching, there's always a breakdown before a breakthrough. So when tragedy strikes, do everything you can to stay the course because something great is on its way. Something fantastic, amazing, magnificent is on its way. And it always starts with something tragic. And it's unfortunate, but normally great. That means that greatness is on its way.
Yeah. It's crazy. I mean, yes, anyone listening to Lashes and Sashes, you have to listen to Sour Lost Sweet Lessons because the stories that you share, honestly, blow my mind that the things that have happened to you, I'm just like, what? But then also the incredible things that you've been able to do with it really is inspiring. So,
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for the shameless plug on my podcast.
Of course, always. Again, I'm unofficial member of the Deshauna Barber fan club. So,
you're the best.
And then in terms of your pageant experience, how was the experience competing at both Miss USA and Miss Universe?
Oh, USA. So I think we were in Vegas for 2.5 weeks for USA. And my roommate was Miss Kansas USA, Victoria Wiggins, but now she's Victoria Moore. She was my roommate. She was one of my bridesmaids. She is the reason I met my husband. I met my husband at her wedding. Isn't that crazy? It's insane. It's so beautiful. Like, it's such a beautiful thing to know that pageantry not only unlocked my life and career and professional success as a speaker, but it also exposed me to my now husband, right? And my, an additional best friend, right? So it's so freaking insane how life works and how puzzle pieces fall so beautifully into place. And that's why it's so good to always have faith that everything is going to work out. Everything always works out, no matter how terrible it feels in the moment. But my 2.5 weeks competing for Miss USA was beautiful. I'm still very close with my class. We're hoping to have a 10-year reunion in 2016. Yes, I pray that it happens. I'm probably going to be pregnant in 2016, but I'm hoping to be able to whip out a 10-year reunion. I'm still so very close with all the girls. They were just such a great, fantastic, beautiful class of women that were super supportive when I won. But my 2.5 weeks leading up to it was hectic. We were in Vegas. We had appearances like every day, all day. I mean, that was a beautiful year to compete. The stage was magnificent. We had the
Yes.
Backstreet
The
Boys.
T-Mobile Arena. I was there. I watched you get crowned.
I didn't know you were there.
Yes. I mean, I didn't know you then. Okay.
Yeah.
Because my best friend in an international pageant ended up becoming Miss Universe Sweden. But before that, we were like, let's just go on a Vegas trip. It'll be fun. And we went to go watch Miss USA, and she wore her Sweden sash. The following year, she won Miss Universe Sweden. But I was also getting ready to compete at Miss Florida USA. So that was like my first year in the Miss USA organization. So we're like, let's just take a look and let's go enjoy Vegas. And it was a gorgeous production. I remember when the Backstreet Boys came out, when all the top 5 was coming in, and it was a very competitive group of girls.
Yes, that was one heck of a year. I mean, just man, I wish production was like that now. But I mean, we got to meet the Backstreet Boys. We did a bunch of like social media content. Yeah, the cheat commercial with the Backstreet Boys. Like this was back when like pageantry was just an experience, in a 2.5 weeks leading up where even if you leave Miss USA, you felt like you had a 2.5 week experience. Like that was an experience. And it was the first year we didn't have Fidel, which I was very upset by for our headshots. It was our first year without Fidel. So I was irritated about that. But just an absolute beautiful experience. Very busy. We were very exhausted by the final day. I flew in a private jet with Pia Wurtzbeck, Miss Universe, back to New York City. So it was like an experience, and I'll never forget it. I was exhausted my year. My year was jam packed with appearances and events. I very rarely got downtime as Miss USA, and all for me to go on to compete at Universe in the Philippines, 3.5 weeks. And I mean, Universe was different back then, but Philippines is really different. We went from island to island to island on private jets to go to all of our different events. The level of exhaustion. I mean, I didn't get any sleep during that 3.5 weeks that I was there. We were every single day from sun up to sundown. We're going from island to island. Sometimes we'd have to stay overnight, so we'd have to bring a carry-on bag. It was one heck of an experience, and oh, it was the best exhaustion you could have. I mean, truly, the best exhaustion you could have. You didn't have time to even breathe during this time. The Philippines made sure that we had the best 3 weeks of our lives. I had Miss Curacao. Chanel Delau was my roommate, still a good friend of mine to this day. I had an amazing class. I mean, still very cool with Miss Philippines, Miss Thailand. I was just in Thailand for my honeymoon. So, of course, I met up with my Miss Thailand, and her name is Shalita. We got drinks and hung out and drank. I hadn't seen her in like, how many years is that? 3, 4. Hadn't seen her in 7 years, but we're still so very close. So she's the first person I messaged when I knew I was coming to Thailand. So it's just relationships that you build that at bare minimum, if you don't walk away with the crown, you should walk away with at least 10 friends that are all just incredible women. And I think pageantry is just a reminder to me how beautiful it is to have a sisterhood to be. So I love relationships with great, awesome, incredible women
It's so cool from all around the world too, that
all around the
cultural
world.
experience. And then I think like a pageant in the Philippines already is going to be huge, but then you have Miss Universe at the
Yeah,
Philippines. They will not play. They will make you work and go out, and you're going to have fans chasing you guys. I just
it's so true. And Pia was Miss Universe at the time. So they were, of course, jumping at the opportunity to bid to have her come back and do her final walk, having been the first Miss Philippines to win Universe in a couple decades. So it was just a beautiful experience. I was very blessed to have Pia and Iris as my roommates. There was never any drama. Everyone talks about how, Miss USA, Miss Universe don't get along when they live together. They're fighting and butting heads. I did not have that experience. They were my best friends during our time living together, and just great, incredible, beautiful women that, I mean, we used to have a ball in the apartment in New York. I hate that Miss Universe and Miss USA are no longer roommates.
I know. I think about it too. I'm like, that New York apartment, like that's the dream that I saw growing up watching Miss USA. And so I'm like, oh man, gosh. And for you guys, and I'm glad you got to have that experience and really feel like a celebrity both in those competitions and then throughout your whole reign as Miss USA. I mean, I didn't know about these private jets. I was like, excuse me, what?
Oh yeah, and that was the only time. After that, I'm flying coach everywhere. But I'm flying coach and in the middle seat during the rest of my time as Miss USA. But at bare minimum, from the competition to go back to New York, that was a private jet, and most of Miss Universe travel was in a private jet. So it was good. But yeah, the rest of my reign, I was in coach. And
Okay, that's fine. And that's still cool. That is still great. Still traveling, nevertheless. As I mentioned before, Sour Lost Sweet Lessons, highly recommend, especially more of a deep dive on your Miss USA journey. But I would like to ask for here, what was probably the biggest takeaway that you got from your year as Miss USA?
probably just I always go by my same quote that I tend to use on every speech, which is, "Do not fear failure, but please be terrified of regret, as giving up is the birth of regret." It is truly, truly, I'm an example and a testament to what it looks like to persevere and to wait on the proper timing, right? I think that we all have a responsibility as human beings to just chase our dreams, because we only get to live this life once. I have been doing that ever since, as a speaker, as an author, as a former nonprofit CEO of a great women veterans nonprofit. I am just a dream chaser, and I highly recommend that people look for ways in which they can not only overcome imposter syndrome, but overcome the fear of failing, the fear of things not working out, the fear of things not going your way. Once you really remove that vest of fear, it's almost like the world opens up, and the world in the life experience becomes easier, because you're accepting of loss, you're accepting of failing, and you have a deep rooted understanding, as I always say, is that failure is a prerequisite to success. And now I've learned, as what they say is to fail gracefully. And I've done that with almost everything. Like I've gone through over the past year, I've been on a new journey of trying new things and doing new things, and I've been failing miserably, but I've also been failing with grace. Sometimes people look at Miss USA, they look at me as a speaker and as a content creator, and they assume that life is just all happiness and giggles and soft bunnies and rainbows. But in truth, life is very hard, and it always has been and it always will be. And there are things that I have wanted that does not work out, but I say to myself, I'm going to fail gracefully in this, because it just means it's not for me, and to me it means it's not meant for me. So I think my biggest takeaway is to chase life, and to love life, and to try new things, and to constantly allow yourself to fail, but to enjoy the roller coaster of life. And Miss USA has taught me how to do that. Being a pageant girl has taught me how to do that, but it has given me a new outlook on life that has been very beautiful and very lovely. And I'm kind of just at a point in my life where things are slowing down, and I'm liking the slowness, but I'm encouraging other people at whatever point you are in your life to just chase it and to go for it. And I'm hoping that my story is a testament to the power of doing that.
100%. This is why your face is in my vision board collage in the back screen of my phone, because you are that example of for me to chase my dreams and not be so wary. And I still am fearful. Right now I just go into things scared. So I'm like, like here we go. I'm trying. But I'm trying to like do it gracefully now. That's my next step. That's my next process. So that's incredible. And I guess transitioning then from your year as Miss USA, you to me are the prime example of what Lashes and Sashes is all about making pageants a launch pad to whatever your biggest goals and dreams are. So, I mean, kudos to you to getting signed. It was with IMG then that, and now Harold Walker as a full-time speaker. Like, did you have a strategy or plan for what you wanted to do once your reign came to an end?
Kind of. So I told myself I wanted to be an actress, which is laughable because, oh my gosh, I hate attention. I know that no one believes me when I say that, but I actually hate attention. I hate being in the spotlight. I have severe social anxiety that nobody notices is there because I've learned, ways to kind of cope with social anxiety, which is something that I think being Miss USA did to me. But yeah, I spoke at the Steve and Marjorie Harvey uh, girls camp in Atlanta, and this was in, I believe, September of 2016. And they just said, "Hey, go up there." And what it does is it brings 100 young Black girls from the Atlanta metropolitan area together, and it's all about mentorship, guiding them, inspiring them to go to college and pursue their career, et cetera, et cetera. So they bring in different celebrities just to come in and talk. So this was September of 2016, and my mom had just passed away about 2 weeks prior to me having to speak at this event. And I was in a very interesting space where I felt that, I don't want to say I failed as a daughter, but I definitely could have been a better daughter. I knew that for sure. So I'm speaking to all these young girls, but I'm also grieving. And I'm also dealing with the death of, one of the most important people that you can have in your life is your parents. So when I walked up there, my heart was so open and vulnerable. And I just wanted to just tell them, please listen to your parents. Please listen to your parents. Please love your parents. Please chase your dreams. So when I went up there, I was at almost like this spiritual high where I was trying to deal with the regrets of where I was in life as a daughter. And I wanted to tell all these daughters to listen to your parents, to chase your dreams, to know that the sky is the limit. And I was not emotional when I was speaking, but my words were emotional and powerful. And by the time I walked off the stage, someone walked up to me and said, "You need to become a motivational speaker." And it's again an example of a moment in which tragedy strikes, but it opens up a door in my life to something that I did not know I was meant to do, that I did not know was going to be a part of my life's plan. But as soon as they said that you should be a motivational speaker, I immediately started researching motivational speaking. And by the grace of heavens, IMG owned the Miss Universe organization at the time, and they had a speakers bureau called IMG Speakers. So I immediately started putting, what do you call it, the nuts and bolts into place. And I got an interview with the Speakers Bureau and did well in my interview, did like a mock speech, and I was assigned an agent. And after that, they gave me a post-dated contract. So I think I gave up my crown. It was on Mother's Day, unfortunately. I gave up my crown, I think it was like May 16th. So they had me sign a post-dated contract for May 17th to be signed to their speakers bureau. And I had just been speaking ever since. And then IMG Speakers dismantled in 2020 and absorbed HWA Speakers, Harry Walker Speakers. So I was grandfathered in to Harry Walker Speakers, which is still owned by IMG. And I've been speaking for them since 2017. So it's been about 7 or 8 years. It's been a beautiful experience. I absolutely love it. But it's just another example of how
That's wild.
yeah, just somehow pushes you into a space that you didn't know
Yeah.
you were meant to be in.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, honestly, even when you were part of PR pageant coaches and you were sharing your story, it felt like I was part of a motivational speech. And then I leave feeling inspired, or even when I listen to your podcast. And I think that's what's so amazing about you is even if people can't go attend one of your speeches because they're not part of some corporate meeting conference, we still can get that from you through the content that you provide us. So I just want to let you know, again, as an unofficial member of your fan club, I really appreciate it because it has been great to motivate me into the dreams that I want to do.
Thank you for that. I love that I've got your support, your reminder to me. Even though the views are not as high as I would like, I'm like, you just, hey, stay the course. You got to keep pushing, allow it to grow and organically become a bigger and larger community. So I'm so grateful to you and everyone else that supports the podcast.
And I know the more people that are going to listen to it, or like they listen to the first one, then they're not going to stop. Then they're going to listen to all the other ones from the past, and they're going to see, wow, like now I'm motivated. Now I want to do more with my life. Now I want to sign up for Thrive mentorship next season, you know, whatever the case it may be. Because I do see it now funnel. It kind of made me become a fan club member, you know. While I think you it was great that you are a former Miss USA, I do personally feel like it was your tenacity and the skills that you've developed in presenting and speaking from the wins and from the losses that has made you the successful speaker and person you are today. So my question is, what advice would you give to both pageant girls preparing for their next competition and then pageant girls preparing for their next phase of life?
So for pageant girls preparing for their next competition, if you don't have a coach, highly recommend you get a coach. Sometimes they have that third eye, you know, they see things that we don't see. So I always think that it's good to get a coach and make sure that it's a coach that has winners. Okay. There's a lot of people out here that say that they're pageant coaches. And when you ask them, do they have any winners under their roster? None of their girls have won anything. So, you know, I think it's really important, or even if they haven't won, you see the success stories behind the girls that have gone from, you know, being non-placed to being first runner up the past 2 years, whatever it is. But you need to have winners, you need to have success stories. So do your research, be able to find a good coach. Obviously, me and you being under PR pageant coaches, Jules Myers, I always recommend Jules, but if you want someone that's in your local area, whatever, do your research. Also, have fun. And you know this, I used to say this all the time at our PRUs and at our like workshops, is that sometimes as a pageant girl, you're so focused on winning that you don't have fun. And the judges can feel that. Okay. The judges can feel when you're walking in this interview room with nothing but intensity and nothing but focus on the crown. So the conversation in the interview feels different than with a girl that's just here to have a good time. If you pick me, you pick me. If you don't, you don't. But I'm having a good time. I enjoy this. My goal is not just to be someone that wins the crown. My goal is to have a good time doing something that I love doing, which is raising awareness about my brand, raising awareness about my platforms and my philanthropic goals. It's walking on stage and having a good time. So I always say to pageant girls, please have a good time. There's nothing fun about interviewing a girl that's so intensely involved in this interview that when you walk out, it's just like, that was actually a little bit draining because it wasn't fun. So I've always used this for every interview strategy that I've used for DC, USA, and Universe, which is I like to treat this as though I'm having coffee with a good friend of mine. But she's not only a good friend, she's a colleague. She's someone that I work with. So how can I make this interview less of an interview and more of a conversation that's fun? Because at the end of the day, the judges don't even necessarily pick the prettiest girl, the girl with the best gown, the girl with the best hair. They pick the girl they like the most. Who do I like the most? Like, yeah, her gown is better than her gown, but I like this girl. So I'm going to probably give a little extra point to her because I just like her. Like after this is over, I want to go out for coffee with this girl. She's somebody that when you walk in the room, you feel her presence. She's enjoyable. She's fun to be around. So have fun at every single category, every single element, every single piece of the pageant. Have a good time. The judges will pick the girl that they like the most, the girl that they think is going to be great representation of the crown. And sometimes it's not the best interviewer. Sometimes it's not the girl, the best job, the best interview, the best face, or the best hair. So have a good time. And then for women that are transitioning, I always say don't be ashamed of the title. Use the title to your advantage. Networking is a massive way of being able to reach your success. So use the title to be able to get to your goals, but don't become reliant on the title either. You want to use it, but it can't be your whole identity. Make sure that you are building a resume outside of just the title. So that's why I make sure I have my bachelor's degree, my master's degree, I have certifications, I have work experience, I am a public speaker. So whatever it is that you're looking to do in life, make sure that your resume not only utilizes your title, you're networking with your title, but that is not the sole piece of your identity, because that can also be limited. Build on it. Exactly. That's a good way to put it. Make sure that you build on it. And I think that, I think that's probably my top advice is to build on the platform and not be reliable on it.
I love it. I love it. And then are there any additional notes that I left off that you'd want to share? And also any shameless plugs?
No, I don't think I have any. I think you did good. I think my podcast, I'm trying to grow it. I'm trying to make sure that it gets the exposure that it deserves, because it is a great podcast, and I'm very vulnerable and transparent about the things and my experiences, in hopes that you all as listeners don't have to experience or to face the lessons that I've had to face, right? To face the turmoil that I've had in moments in which I've just had struggling moments. So check out my podcast, Sour Law Sweet Lessons, on any platform where you listen to podcasts. And if you're just looking for consistent motivation, you can go to Deshauna.com. I've got little clips and speeches on there, and then also Deshauna the Speaker on all platforms. I'm trying to grow it. So I'm on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. So check out that Deshauna Barber and Deshauna the Speaker.
Yeah. And then I guess too, for other forms of content, if people are interested, I think your book, Pretty Ugly Lessons, is great. And then also the speaking book. You provide so many forms of content, because I am a huge podcast listener. I listen to podcasts basically 24/7, but some of my friends aren't. They're book readers. I personally am not as good with reading books. I really have to force myself into it, but it's so great that you provide this motivational content in so many formats that masses can appreciate, like myself.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for that. Yeah. Pretty Ugly Lessons is on Amazon, $14.99 for the paperback. And it's a really good self-help book. It's a book where if you turn different pages after each chapter, there's takeaways where you can take notes and things. So it's a self-help book that I was so excited to write about my top 14 lessons that I've experienced in life. That's why it's called Pretty Ugly Lessons, because they're pretty ugly. They have their good, their bad. They're very similar to why that's why a lot of my things have lessons involved, or it's Pretty Ugly Lessons or Sour Law Sweet Lessons. I think that life is all about learning lessons and growing from them and becoming wiser and more elevated versions of yourself. So definitely check that out. But I always am looking to be a teacher of life, as they say. And I think both the book and the podcast does that.
Yes. Well, thank you. And thank you so much for your time again. And thank you for being a part of this. I really, really appreciate your time. Thank you, Deshauna.
Oh, no problem. Thank you so much for having me, and just let me know when it comes out so I can check it out and share it on all my platforms. But you're so great, Elizabeth. I'm so thankful, we could finally get this on the calendar and have a chance to talk. So thank you so much for having me.
Oh, no, thank you. All right. Well, then I always do a little farewell like the pageant people. So signing off, she is former Miss USA, Deshauna Barber.
Thank y'all.